99X. It's the Morning X. Barnes and Leslie. Fram, there is so much happening in the restaurant world right now.
Which I love to follow.
Like on fire. So I want to welcome Beth McKibben on from Rough Draft Atlanta. She is a senior editor in charge of the food and dining section. Hey, good morning, Beth.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. And you're a 99Xer, right? Going way back.
Oh, yeah, way back.
It's funny. Beth has
Yes.
a piece of 99X history that lives in her house. She was telling us, what is your husband's claim to fame?
He once raced Jimmy Barron.
I remember that.
Wait, tell me.
I don't know the full story. This is before we met, but I think he lost.
I'm glad that he didn't lie to you because we have this archive here, and I just found that, Fran. Remember, there was a guy claiming Jimmy, for some reason, was talking about how he's such an athletic specimen and that he could beat, any listener. And this listener challenged him, came up to our parking lot on Piedmont, we had a whole official live broadcast, and Jimmy smoked him.
I know, and you and I were shocked, basically.
So Beth, just know you're married to not an athletic specimen because he lost to Jimmy Barron.
Jimmy Barron, who hasn't worked out a day in his life.
Well, you know what? My husband was like, it happened, and it was part of my history, and he was totally fine with it. It was a moment.
That is class. I think that aired recently on Best of the Morning X, which is 6 to 7 a.m. Go back in the podcast and you can find I'm going to try and find that for you. But let's get into the food. I want to ask you, opening up, there's a place everyone's talking about. I don't know the name of it, but it's in Chambly, and apparently it's a bagel place that the minute they open, they sell out of everything.
Ooh.
The Bronx Bagel Buggy.
The Bronx Bagel Buggy?
Bronze or Bronx?
Bronx, like as in the Bronx. And they started as a farmer's market stall, and it just took off. And so they went ahead and started to work on opening a permanent location. And it just opened, a couple of weeks ago, and lines have just been out the door.
So real authentic New York bagels.
That's amazing.
Atlantans have very strong opinions about bagels. And if people are lining up, then, they've got something.
I'm looking at their Instagram right now. It looks like they have pizza on bagel-ish. Yep. But it looks like a bunch of other things other than just generic bagels. I can see why it's a hot topic. But the Bronx Bagel Buggy in Chambly. And it looks like they're killing it. So cool.
Good for them.
Yes.
This is a trend I would love you to talk about, Beth. The whole food hall trend, because it's happening everywhere. And you've got the Moreland food halls. I personally like the food halls because the food is great.
Yeah, this food hall trend is, basically anybody who's lived in Atlanta for the last decade has seen the food halls kind of explode over those 10 years. It started out with Krog Street Market and Pond City Market back in 2014 and 2015, and pretty much took off from there. So now you've got food halls pretty much all over the city. They're now expanding into the suburbs. So you have Marietta Square Market, you have Feast over at the Battery, you have Halcyon up there in Alpharetta, Forsyth County.
You got the Phipps, the one at Phipps, that's fairly new.
Yep, you've got that one. You've got Collective at Coda in Midtown. Politan Rose now expanding, so they have one at Colony Square. They have one that's going into Dunwoody. They've got one going to Peachtree Corners.
Isn't it funny how it's just another take on a food court.
Yeah,
it is, but it's elevated food. You've got great restaurants that are going in.
But it's so funny. It's just so cyclical. It is the same thing, but better, bigger brands or whatever, putting more into it.
For a lot of the food halls that are opening, most of the operators are local. And so in a lot of ways, there's an argument to be made that the food hall model allows local operators that would have a harder time finding funding to open a restaurant are able to do it on a smaller scale and a much more affordable scale at a food hall. And so a lot of these places will, end up having multiple locations at other food halls.
talking with Beth McKibben, who has years of covering the food scene in Atlanta for about every publication you can think of. She is with Rough Draft Atlanta, senior editor, responsible for food and dining. This was a pretty massive year for Atlanta as far as, we're finally with Michelin star restaurants.
Yeah.
Wasn't this was the first time, wasn't it? This year or last year?
Yeah.
So who got the Michelin's? Who's the big daddy right now?
The Michelin stars, there are 5 one-star restaurants, and Atlas, Bacchanalia, Hawakaya, Lazy Betty, and Mujo.
Dude, you just pulled that out of the air. Good job.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we have, I think there's about 10 Bib Gourmands as well. So, and then several recommended restaurants. And then we have 2 Green Star restaurants, which the Green Stars are a little bit more.
What does that mean?
What does that mean?
So you have to have like sustainable practices. It has to be very environmentally friendly. Like they have to be using, the whole point of that star is that restaurant is really trying to be environmentally and eco-friendly as possible, using a lot of local, like the Chastain has their own garden, which is one of the Green Stars. Bacchanalia, you've got Anna Quatrano has a farm that she gets a lot of her produce from, that sort of thing. So it's like the whole point of that is to be as sustainable as possible. And I believe there was only like 21 other restaurants in the U.S. that are Green Stars. So that's actually a pretty decent, that's pretty big. The
Chastain got one?
It's got to be difficult.
Yeah, we have 2 in Atlanta.
I always forget about that restaurant. Leslie, you could have walked to that back. It used to be, what was it called back in the day?
It was Horseradish Grill.
Yes.
And I remember they had their own garden.
Yeah, we did a Live X or something there with Crash Test Dummies.
We did. I love that restaurant.
It's lovely. They've done such a great job with it too, and it's really it's become a local hub for a lot of the neighborhood over there. So, and it's just a great space. They have it open all day, and so you can go over there and just hang out in the morning with coffee and pastries, or you can have lunch, and then dinner is when I think they really shine.
We're talking to Beth McKibben from Rough Draft Atlanta, ATL on Twitter, X. I have to ask you, because a couple of my friends are really bummed about Highland Bakery closing after all these years.
Yeah, I think that, there are so many big closures happening right now. I really think the thing with Highland Bakery was a combination of that space is highly coveted, but also I think she was looking to kind of get out of that part of the business and kind of really focus on the catering, which is a big deal for them. And, it's just a really sad closure for a lot of people, because it's been such an institution in that part of the city. And, the lines have never not been out the door. And I think she's just ready to move on from that. I've heard that from more than one restaurant owner this year, that they're just kind of ready to move on. They've been operating for a while.
It's a tough business.
It's a horribly tough business. Everything is just, you're living on the margin all the time. It's not easy, and people don't really understand how incredibly hard running a restaurant is.
And you're anchored to it 24/7. You are like living and breathing it. Well, it was great having you on, Beth McKibben. We have to do this more often. Love having the restaurant talk. I know we have Caleb on sometimes from What Now, and it's just great to get all this inside stuff. Leave us with what's one great new place you've found that you dig?
Oh my God. There's
just
so
one.
many.
Just one.
Put her on the spot.
I'm going to shout it out because I do love it. There's actually 2.
Okay.
One of them is a bar and restaurant over in the Reynoldstown area called Whoopsies. I really love that place. It is super fun. It is just such a chill environment. The food is outstanding. The drinks are great. It's not a big place. You don't need a reservation, but it is just a good vibe. And then I live in Midtown, and my regular coffee shop and wine bar now is Larrikin over on 12th Street.
Nice.
So,
Ooh,
couple
nice.
recos.
Yeah.
All right, Beth. Thank you very much. Check her out, Rough Draft Atlanta, and all the socials. This is the original. It's 99X.